What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the CPI reports that just came out, what's going on with the market moving forward, and also some other developments when it comes to the charts and such. But before I break anything down, all this information, before I get into any more details about what's happening with the markets, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon. Anyways, when it comes to SPY, I just want to mention that we had a very, very interesting day. This thing sold off like a rock. It came down very, very hard today because the CPI overall was not that great. Some of the metrics, or most of them, were actually above expectations, especially core, and was not looking too good. When that happened, we saw the market just tank and gap down very hard. And SPY was kind of like consolidating in this 494 area before it continued to sink. But then since then, we saw SPY just, it just really turned weak throughout the day until the very end of the day. The last like 30 minutes, we saw the buyers come back and push SPY above a critical level. So this is opening up the possibility of a bounce and an attempt to rebound for tomorrow, which I think might end up happening. So I want to break down how this could actually play out, some very important levels to watch for, and what's going on with CPI. Let me just go over the numbers real quick. CPI year over year was 3.1%. That's on the hotter end of the forecast. So it still is technically aligned with expectation, just a little bit hot on that end. Month over month, CPI for all elements was at 0.3%. That's above the consensus in the forecast. Core CPI year over year was at 3.9%, above the 3.7% consensus and forecast. So this was hot. Inflation month over month was hot. And then core CPI month over month was hot at 0.4%. What does this mean? This means that there's another uptick in core CPI, another uptick in inflation. And this is important because it's making things more complicated for the Fed. This basically shows us that with inflation dropping, food and energy help to bring inflation down a little bit. But once you exclude those factors, what tends to be more important to the Fed is core. Core CPI actually went up a little bit. And that's not at all what the market wants to see. Now, you could argue that this is kind of like inflated by like housing or other factors like that. But at the end of the day, the data is what's going to be king. And the data is still showing that slight increase. Now, what does this mean? This means that the Fed is in a more complicated position. The Fed was talking about how they're uncertain about whether or not they're going to cut rates in March. We know they're going to cut rates soon. I do believe they're going to do it soon. It's just that we don't know exactly when. Will it be in May? Will it be in June? We're still yet to determine the exact timing. But right now, for the month of March, during the next FOMC meeting, there's a 91% chance that the Fed is going to keep rates the same, and there's a 8.5% chance the Fed is going to give us a cut. This was adjusted. This actually went up a bit because of what we saw from CPI, and that's very important. Now, in different sectors, especially from consumer discretionaries, many EVs out there, especially like Tesla, are heavily impacted by interest rates. So finding out news like this is very, very bad. That's why we saw Tesla sell off the way it did alongside other tickers. Now, that is a little bit negative for the markets, but the market dropped so hard to the point where one could argue that it's due for a little bounce, and that's still a real possibility. Now, when it comes to other factors affecting the markets, I went over Shopify and Coca-Cola's earnings in the morning, but then when it comes to Airbnb and Upstart, I have more data to talk about. Besides that, don't forget that we have CME Group and then Gold and a few others like Sony before the market opens tomorrow. And then for Thursday, we have Coinbase and Roku. Make sure you pay attention to those two if you're interested. What happened with Airbnb, for today? Basically, their earnings were not too bad. The reason why this is important is because looking down at the chart, EPS showed a 55-cent loss. It's not immediately clear if that's comparable to the 62-cent profit estimate, but once again, that's not the best of news. However, revenue was at 2.22 billion, still very, very close to expectations, a little bit better. Revenue was up 17%, and their full year forecast was actually not that bad. Guidance is still not that bad either. And they're saying that guest demand is still quite strong. So pretty decent overall. Airbnb did, I would say, kind of like mixed, pretty good, if anything. But Upstart did not do as well. Revenue was actually down 4% to about $140 million for Q4. That's actually relative to Q2 of 2022. And then the GAAP net loss improved just slightly. Besides that, EPS and revenue were close. and then they ended up not giving us the strongest guidance, kind of missing some estimates here and there. So with that, and also their contribution margin kind of like dropping a little bit, this caused the share price to tumble down very hard. And it's not the best of things in this tough lending environment. So that being said, that's it for earnings for now. Don't forget that for tomorrow, we just have like CME Group, Sony, and just a couple of others. Nothing too crazy. Now let's talk about the charts. How are the charts going to react after what we saw? So I just want to focus on this now. As far as the charts go, SPY could try to rebound if we could break this 20 EMA. If we do break this, I think it's going to be making its way up to the 496s if we manage to get this break. So we're going to be watching for this for tomorrow. One could also argue we have kind of like an inverse head and shoulders like structure, right? This could be like a head, this could be like a left shoulder forming. If we hold up in this range up here, we push like a little bit more, it could be form like a right shoulder, then push our way back up. It's always a possibility, but this is going to depend on the big test. So here's what I'm looking for. So these are your levels on SPY. This line right here is 496. This is where 494 happens to be. Today I told you that when this thing dropped, we had to be watching 494. It did lose this for, excuse me, we lost this for many, many hours basically. But then we got a little rebound. Once we rebounded, we actually managed to close above this. So that's a good sign. But the question is, can we continue to hold above this? Are we going to try to break out? And I think there's a good chance that looking at the buyers, they're trying to buy it and defend their positions. So we might see some defense being played tomorrow by the bulls. This makes me think that it might come down a little bit when we open. A little rebound could be expected after that. And then we're going to be looking for a push back up to about 496. I think it's going to be testing that. Now, I can't promise you a whole lot until we see where it closes again. If we could get above 496 and hold above that, there is potential for it to come back up towards 500, get close to the 500 area. There's a very good chance it will do that if we can try to break that 496 resistance and hold above it. If we fail to do so, if we test this and reject, then it's not going to be looking good. We're just going to either range trade or make our way back down to this range. All right, so 496 is going to be a big test tomorrow. I think it's going to test it. If we could either close above it or even hold above it, we're going to turn more bullish. We could actually see a little rebound. If we fail to do so, we're just going to range trade. That's my view of SPY. I think it might test that for tomorrow. And if you want to be bearish, let's just say we test 496 and we fail. If we lose 494 again, make sure you watch like 492. Then below this low, we basically have 490 coming next. I don't think it's going to just crash from here. I think there's a very good chance it's going to like start low and try to rebound to 496 and either trade sideways or try to break it and push a little higher just temporarily, right? I'm just talking about one day. I'm not saying for like the next 2 weeks it's going to run. I'm just talking about one little attempt to rebound. How about for Tesla? What do I see for Tesla right over here? Well, I think that looking at Tesla, you will notice that this thing's been on a little downtrend right over here. It dropped really, really hard. It dropped from 195 a share all the way down to almost 182 in just 2 days, which is absolutely insane. I think that Tesla is due for an attempt to try to make its way back up. So, two possibilities on Tesla are it also depends on the news because the news is tricky. Tesla might come back down to 182 and then rebound from here and start pushing back up to about 186. I think there's a good chance it might try to break out just a little bit and make its way up temporarily, then just trade sideways in this range. If we're bearish, you want to see it basically lose 182 and test 180. If we're bullish, you want to break 184 and make our way up to this 186 range, and eventually 188. I think what's going to happen is Tesla will start down here and start pushing again and just kind of trade sideways, kind of like how it did today back in the 186s, and maybe even test 188 and just go back and forth with a sideways day. I think there might be an attempt to do so because, as a reminder, I kind of skipped this part over, guys. I apologize. We don't really have much coming out for tomorrow, just a couple of Fed speakers, and all the data is very, very minor. We don't have much data coming out, so this does give the market some breathing room. So I think we might see an attempt by Tesla trying to get back up to that resistance. On the triple Q, I think something similar is developing. I think that Nvda is going to help this as well. So watch support at 427, 425, and then 423.8. Watch resistance at 430. If you break that, 432 could come. What do I think is going to pan out? In my opinion, I think there's a very good chance that the triple Q is going to attempt to break this 430 area. It might kind of like retrace right here. It could be forming kind of like an inverse head and shoulders. This could be like a head and a left shoulder could be forming. So look for a little retracement to grab liquidity and an attempt to get back up. I am not saying it's going to run all the way back up to 440 in one day or just like super quickly, but I think there could be an attempt buy it to get back into the 430 area. So look for a little drop in a bounce and a push back up around like 432 or so. We have this like imbalance. If you could break 430, watch for 432 to fill this imbalance. And I think that that's likely what's going to pan out. A little drop in a bounce. That's the most likely possibility. But watch the levels just to be safe. Part of why I'm saying that is because Nvidia has an inverse head and shoulders like structure that's developing. We might see Nvidia try to rebound. It was looking kind of indecisive and tricky today, but there might be an attempt to break this. Now, this could be a change in market structure because you have to remember that before Nvidia was making higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, and back and forth and back and forth. But this time, Nvidia made a lower high here, so it's going to be a very important test. Are we about to downtrend off this lower high, or is Nvidia going to try to break out of it? We'll just have to wait and see. But in order for this to pan out, we have to see if this could form this inverse head and shoulders, and if we could see some buyers try to defend it. So if we manage to break out, watch this 730 resistance. If we get above 730, there's a chance we might try to fill this imbalance at 736 and retest to 740. So this imbalance right here is something I'm going to be watching. And if we turn bearish, you want to see it basically lose 715. If we lose that, 707 is a real possibility. I think with the inverse head and shoulders like structure, Nvidia might come down to grab liquidity one more time, and we might see an attempt to break out again. It might actually try to bounce temporarily, and we might have to see how well it could hold. But even if it does try to get this inverse head and shoulders and tries to bounce, the question is, are we going to try to break this all-time high, or are we going to fail to do so? Because if we fail to do so, it could still be a change in market structure, and Nvidia could still downtrend. So you want to be very careful when watching that. But like I said before, look for a little drop and a bounce for tomorrow. I think there's a very good chance we're going to see something like that. How about for Aapl? Guys, remember Aapl, okay? I've been screaming over and over and over again for the past week. There's a head and shoulders on Aapl, right? We had this left shoulder, the head and the right shoulder. And I told you to wait for confirmation. If we get that break, 185 is coming. Remember, I said that many times for the last couple of days. Well, we got the break yesterday below 188. And then today we got the confirmation move all the way down, not just to 185. We actually went a little bit lower to 183.5 before rebounding. So Apple's still looking kind of weak, but I think there's a good chance it's going to actually come back to the 184s, try to balance and make its way back up to 185. I still think that Apple's going to remain a little bit weaker, but there might be an attempt to rebound just temporarily, just slightly. But I'm not going to guarantee it's going to hold it. It might just kind of chop in the 185s temporarily before anything else. So that's what I'm seeing for now, at least on Aapl. Now, when it comes to the VIX, I want to call out something very important on the VIX. The VIX got a nice breakout today, but the thing about the VIX is it made its way back down to this 15 area. I'm watching this imbalance over here, this previous breakout area at 14.95. Will the VIX kind of like pop and end up dropping just a little bit more because the market tries to rebound temporarily? Or could this be an official breakout? We'll just have to wait and see how well the VIX holds. Now, let me just go over a couple more tickers before I end the video. I have the same view of SPY, even looking at our different charts here. On Rivian, this is trying to rebound a little bit. I said in the morning we could be looking for 15. We actually hit 15, and now we're trying to rebound. If it breaks 15.49, watch for 15.77. There's a very good chance it's going to be testing that. For SoFi, I think that if it breaks 8.12, if that breaks, we're going to be looking for a push back up towards 8.2 and eventually this imbalance at 8.29. So I think there could be a little rebound. It could be forming a wedge, but I can't guarantee that unless we break 8.12. So it's going to be a big test. For Palantir, this is a little tricky, guys. Excuse me. We're going to be watching support at 23.8. We have resistance at 24.32. If we break that, look for a push for 25. For the IWM, Russell 2000, we're going to be watching to see if this thing could kind of retest 196. If we do so, 198 is coming, then eventually 200. I think it's going to be testing 196 and eventually 197.14 and 198. Those are going to be at three levels at our EMAs. If we get above 198, we turn a little bit more bullish, but I think at the very least, 196 plus is coming just temporarily, and we'll see if it bounces or not off of that. For Microsoft, it came down pretty hard. Microsoft was at 421 just yesterday in the pre-market, and now we're all the way down to 403. It's a big drop it got. I think it is due to retest 412. I think it might pop a little bit, and it could reject again, so be careful. It's still looking kind of weak, not the strongest. For AMD, AMD is forming a bullish wedge right over here. I'm going to be looking to see if we can break 72. If it breaks 72, it could be on its way back up towards 73.5 and eventually 175. There's also an inverse head and shoulders that could be forming, so look for a little rebound. It might try to push back up, so watch for that very carefully. For the SQQQ, since I went over the VIX already, this is forming a bearish divergence. But I think that looking at the technicals, it could test 11.5, which suggests the market could push a little bit. But I'm not too sure if it's going to break below that. We have to wait and see. Not as certain just yet. The dollar has attempted to break out, but be careful because the dollar was up pretty big. It might be retesting 104.75. It has to bounce off this if you want to remain bearish in the markets. If it loses 104.75, it could sink, and that could be a bullish signal for the markets. For Coinbase, this is down 4.7%, but it's actually consolidating quite well. From a nice double bottom, we're going to be looking to see if we could break 142.97. If we break that, we're going to be retesting this previous support, becoming resistance very close to 147. So if the double bottom forms, going to be looking for a breakout. That's going to be fine. There is potential for that to happen. For Google, in my opinion, is kind of indecisive, not too strong looking. I think it could tag 147.46, but I'm not sure it's going to break out. It's not looking the best right now. It's kind of stuck in this range. So look for 147.5, then maybe a rejection. We'll wait and see. For Amazon, Amazon has kind of like this nice, uh, there's a nice liquidity grab down here. If this is, if this is establishing, excuse me, a lower high, I think it might be on its way to 170. It could test 170. We'll have to see if that breaks. If we reject off this, we could sink lower. But if we manage to break above 170, we could hold up. So we have to watch that close tomorrow. And then for Meta is very indecisive as well. Not looking the strongest, not too strong, not extremely weak. So in my opinion, it looks like it could come down a little bit actually. It looks like it might test uh, around 458 and then try to rebound to 462. But I'm not too sure if it's going to break or not because it's kind of failed to break this 50 EMA already. So I could see it dropping and then popping, but I'm not sure it's going to break out. It looks kind of indecisive, kind of range bound, at least for the time being. So we'll be watching this as well. So with that being said, guys, I just want to thank you all so much for listening. Hope you guys have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. The market in general, we might see a little attempts to rebound, but I can't guarantee the market's just going to push forever. We'll just have to see how it reacts to resistance. With that being said, have a great day. Get ready for tomorrow. I'll be talking again in the morning. Please, please, please remain calm, cool, and collected. Have a great night, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you, and peace out.